In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Well, the college football world kind of feels like the Upside Down or playing musical chairs with coaches and players. Well, you'd be right. And the latest news out today involving a pair of SEC teams. And these two teams were in the headlines just a couple of weeks ago when Lane Kiffin made the move from Oxford, Mississippi to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Well, Frank Wilson will be doing the opposite. The interim head coach for the LSU Tigers in the bowl game will soon after go over to Oxford to be the running backs coach at Ole Miss. It's a crazy world out there. We're here to break it down on Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, this has been a really interesting dynamic here in the coaching world, and it's not just Ole Miss LSU. And we'll touch on another one that reminds me of this in a heartbeat between two rivals in the SEC. But this is a really interesting situation as it relates to what could possibly be down the road in recruiting for both of these teams as they look to set their rosters for the 2026 season.
Yeah, and I think this obviously all goes back to Lane Kiffin taking the LSU job about a month ago now, and everything, all the hoopla around it. It was, a lot of people were basically anticipating that moment for about a month prior, and all of these players and coaches kind of had to silence the noise and still play football. And I mean, kudos to the Ole Miss team for basically weathering the storm, so to speak, in that regard, and still finishing with a great season now, obviously under Pete Golding as they head into the college football playoff. But this is just another wrinkle in what I think is just got to be one of the craziest, sequence of events in recent memory. I mean, I know in college football we've had plenty of crazy sequences with coaches leaving, and you take your staff to a new place, and then the whole what John Summerall is doing right now for Tulane, donating $100,000. That's what some people are considering the right way to leave and not taking any of the recruits. And I mean, you've got Lane Kiffin on one end, and then you got John Summerall on the other end. But this new wrinkle with Frank Wilson going to take the running backs coach job over at LSU or over at Ole Miss after how much he said he loved the state of Louisiana and the university as well. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it adds drama and intrigue. You have to think of the chain of events that have happened just since Thanksgiving. Since Black Friday happened, you had Ole Miss and Mississippi State meeting the Egg Bowl. Then soon after that, you had Lane Kiffin taking his talents over there to LSU, and then Frank Wilson being obviously the interim coach, and you thought that they had some things bubbling there. He's a Louisiana guy, by the way. He's Louisiana native, but he had some time at Ole Miss before. I think 2005 to 2007. He was an assistant coach there at Ole Miss, so he's not completely new to that program. But then since then, we've had all these domino effects, and then sandwiched in between that, the SEC did the best thing ever, made the first SEC game between these two teams in Ole Miss as Lane Kiffin goes back. So the SEC just has added more drama and more intrigue to what is already going to be a really interesting game between these two to open up next season. However, both teams are really trying to do their best to navigate this upcoming year, starting with Ole Miss in the playoff.
I would argue that this return for Lane Kiffin is easily going to top his return to Knoxville. Just based on the hype. I mean, obviously, he spent more time in Oxford than he did in Knoxville.
Right.
I mean, I don't remember as messy of a breakup, so to speak. The one in Knoxville is messy, but not like this, where you basically are giving your coaches an ultimatum where, hey, you need to get on the plane with me or else there's not going to be a spot for you.
Right, and I think one of the key differences in his departure from Knoxville as his departure from Ole Miss is that his departure from Knoxville, it wasn't like they were coming off of a great season.
Right.
What was happening is that you saw the signs of, this could work with Lane, and it felt like, okay, you're building towards something. This is completely different because now you have a team legitimately in the hunt for the national championship. So the Tennessee one, it was like we haven't had a good coach in a while. It was outside of, obviously Philip Fulmer had a good run, but it was built on basically like a hope of a potential national championship future, not based on like, hey, what we're already doing. Not to mention at the time, I think deep down Tennessee fans kind of knew that at the time that Southern Cal was a better job.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to admit it to themselves. So the vitriol came from, you're leaving us for, and it was almost like an anger because you're like, okay, you're leaving us for what you consider a better program. We don't consider a better program, but even though deep down they knew it. I think a lot of Ole Miss fans probably justifiably think, well, this is a lateral move. In 2025 standards,
I still think it is.
Right.
I mean, Ole Miss has the resources. It has the NIL. It seems like Lane Kiffin, as much as he wants to admit it or not, I think his heart was always in. He was always going to take the Ole Miss or the LSU job.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever was going to come back to Ole Miss. And this was just him, pondering and just waiting until the last minute. Because I mean, when you follow the chain of events for Lane Kiffin, you mentioned the USC job opening up, and then going and taking that, and then the outcry after, and then the firing on the tarmac. He goes to join Nick Saban's staff, and then Saban basically fires him before the national championship because he was so distracted on the new job over at FAU, and then he leaves FAU for Ole Miss, and Ole Miss was the longest stop he made somewhere, but you could just tell, as much as he wanted to admit that he's a changed person, as much as, the documentary wanted to paint him in a different light, I mean, he still is the same person. He's still Lane Kiffin.
Right.
And this one, just, in my honest opinion, and what I've gathered from all the information that's come out in the about month since this whole thing went down, was that Lane Kiffin was always going to take this job, and he was just never coming back to Ole Miss, and he just wanted to wait until the last minute.
Absolutely. Speaking from the Ole Miss perspective here, how big is this, do you think, for Pete Golding to be able to get a caliber of a guy like Frank Wilson with his recruiting background?
Yeah, I mean, he's worked with 2 5-stars and 4 8-star running backs since 2022, and now I will say, those running backs since 2022 have kind of underperformed. I mean, when we look at some of the numbers, this year they averaged 106.6 yards per game on the ground. That was 123rd. We've been talking about the run game struggles all year. We thought Caden Durham was going to be one of the better running backs. But I will say this, 2024, 116.4 yards per game, 108. And now I see the number in 2023. It's 204 yards per game, and that was 11th. But you got to remember Jaden Daniels had 94.3 yards per game. So, I mean, you take that out, it's pretty much been the same thing.
Right.
Now, I will say this. There's a caveat. He's a great recruiter, but when you look at some common themes of struggles for LSU during that time, it feels like we've always been talking about the offensive line struggling.
Yeah.
And you cannot have a good run game. This is where it blows my mind to some people, is like when they harp on teams not having a good run game, but the offensive line is awful, and cannot block anything. They just stand there like, the guys when they rush the field, the security guys, they just stand there and do nothing.
Yeah.
You cannot just be like, oh, he's a bad running back. Oh, he's a bad coach.
Correct.
I mean, when there's no holes, you can't get
you
can't get through.
It's one of the weirdest, I think, when people talk about running games, sometimes in ways beyond me, it doesn't necessarily start with the offensive line. It starts with the running back. It starts with the scheme. It starts with the coach. And a lot of times it's like, hey, do you have 5 guys that can play on a string in the trenches that can make your running game really work? Because we've even seen average running backs come in and, play well with great offensive line. So it really starts there up front. And like you said, a lot of times you can't have your quarterback being half of your rushing, production like we saw with Jaden Daniels, unless you have just a dynamic talent there at running back or there at quarterback like a Lamar, like a Jaden Daniels, like a Josh Allen, or somebody who could run really potently and bring that part of his game out to the forefront. So I am interested to see how Lane retools that, because between Lane and Frank Wilson, you would think there would be enough, whether portal interests and or what they can recruit out of high school and out of the early part of the signing day when guys get out of their agreements early on and get inside the portal. But it will be interesting because he is a good recruiter, but sometimes doesn't seem like the numbers match up.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about Frank Wilson here.
Yes.
Okay. So
with Lane for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Lane, he just signed the #1 player in next year's class, and who knows if he's going to be able to take Kewan Lacey away from Oxford. That's to be seen. I know Ole Miss signed. Here's that terminology again. Agreed to more deals. It still sounds so weird in today's world. But here's the most interesting thing. not only is Frank Wilson going to Ole Miss, we basically have a trade going on here because LSU gets Billy Glasscock, the former Ole Miss general manager, and Ole Miss gets Austin Thomas, the former LSU general manager, and Frank Wilson, the former LSU running backs coach. And we don't know what Kevin Smith's future is. I know he's going to coach the running backs through the college football playoff here, but could he follow Lane Kiffin to LSU? So we basically have a 2-for-2 trade.
And this would be really interesting because you do have a lot of dynamics here because obviously these two schools from a straight up proximity standpoint are relatively close to one another.
Right.
So it's not like these people are uprooting their homes and their lives. They're not going from one coast to the other. So a lot of this makes sense on paper too. But also it seems to feel like while Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding were, they were in the same meeting rooms like 5 weeks ago, game planning and whatnot. And now it feels like a subtle war between the two to be able to, whether it's get talent, get coaches and everything else. And you're now having to recruit not just a roster, but you're having to recruit a staff and a support staff and a front office, so to speak. And we're talking weird terms like blending college and pro, almost building a front office. And it feels like they're just taking from one another.
We already are doing that with general managers and everything. I mean, that's just today's college football, college anything world. But, I will be very interested to see. You and I talked off air about this, and we'll talk more about the Ole Miss Tulane game tomorrow. But it will be very interesting to see how Ole Miss comes out in that game in the first half. You brought that up to me because then it's going to be like, all right, is this team actually a contender?
Right.
Or is it a potential fraud, as some people like to throw that term around, which I still think is kind of crazy. I don't think Ole Miss is a fraud. But the only thing I worry about is, will Kejuan Lacey end up entering the portal? Will Trinidad Chambliss end up entering the portal? Because he said he's going to weigh his options after the season, which I think is crazy to say before the season's even done. That's talk like you're done and you've got like a bowl game or something. That's bowl game talk, not college football playoff talk. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it does feel like even if his mind's in a different place, it feels like he's 1 foot out the door in this situation there going into next week. But I'm with you in as far as I want to see how LSU comes out or Ole Miss comes out in that first half of that bowl game. It'll have been, I think, 3 weeks since they had played the Egg Bowl in their final game. So there's enough time to decompress everything, and we'll find out how they'll all roll when they rematch against Tulane there in the college football playoff. Ole Miss in the upcoming season. We mentioned that game there against LSU in the SEC opener. So we should have a lot of fun there as we open this one up. And we have a great show up ahead and some new guests here on our program here on Southeast Sports Plus. We'll catch up with Glenn Kingley out of Champaign. We'll talk some Illinois Fighting Illini. Also, Nolan Knight joins us from Richmond, Virginia, and Ian Kress also back with us from Lansing, Michigan. Can't wait to talk about these topics and so much more. We'll talk a little bit more about LSU's new hire, Illinois preparing for Tennessee. Can the UVA Cavs top Missouri, and how will Michigan fare against Texas in that big bowl game there? Stay with us here on Southeast Sports Plus. We return after the break. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. We continue here on this Thursday with a new guest, and really excited to be joined by Glenn Kinley, joining us from Champaign, Illinois. First of all, Glenn, welcome to the show, Southeast Sports Plus today. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me on. So I think it was my first appearance on the show, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Maybe it won't be my last if Illinois. I guess Illinois plays Mizzou in basketball in a couple of weeks, so you guys, or that's less than that now. It's that's coming up on Monday. But yeah, we get these, I guess you can call them Big Ten SEC crossover episodes here and there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some really interesting ones as it relates to Illinois because they cross with Tennessee in multiple sports in a really short window of time. Let's first of all start off with football here in the Music City Bowl because it is a trip to Nashville, so it's a trip on Tennessee's home turf, so to speak. What are some of the ways that the Illinois Fighting Illini are gearing up for this matchup as they go to Tennessee in a quote-unquote neutral site game?
Yeah, Illinois is kind of an older team. They brought back, I think it was 16 or 18. I believe it was 18 starters from their bowl game last year. They beat South Carolina in that bowl game last year and brought just about everybody back. They lost one really, really good wide receiver who's now with the Denver Broncos, and that was their biggest loss. But they brought a ton of guys back, and I think most of those guys are going to play in this bowl game. Not all of them. They have had two significant opt-outs for the NFL draft. That would be Gabe Akis. He's an edge rusher or an outside linebacker who leads the Big Ten in sacks. And then they had an offensive lineman, one of their best offensive linemen, one of their tackles opt out for the draft as well. So those two spots will be the two they have to fill, but they got a lot of guys back from last year, a lot of guys who have played a lot of football, and a lot of guys who kind of, I think, have been a big part of this turnaround of Illinois football to where there was fans this year at Illinois that were kind of bummed they weren't in the playoff. It used to be like, oh my gosh, you won 6 wins. Way to go, guys, you know? So these guys have been a big part in taking Illinois football from a place where 6 wins used to be, let's give them all a medal of honor, and now they won, 8, and people were a little bit upset about it. So this is a senior class that's historic, and I think kind of wants to go out on a high note just because they've done a lot for Illinois football.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this turnaround for Illinois football really started in what is now referred to as the longest game in college football history, going back to Penn State. I was in attendance, so I can say that. Wow. It was cold, it was rainy, and it was just nothing but football weather. But when you look at this year's team, it's hard to look past quarterback Luke Altmaier, and we've been able to follow Tennessee throughout this entire year. The defense hasn't been great. What do you expect to see from him in this bowl game?
Yeah, Illinois, probably a similar spot. You could say the defense hasn't been great, but the offense has been pretty good. Not always perfect, but pretty good. Altmaier came back for his 3rd year at Illinois. This matchup is unique because actually Luke, I told Tennessee, he keeps having these crossover episodes with Tennessee. It was actually when Illinois played Tennessee in basketball last year that Luke, during that game, announced on the court, on the microphone at the basketball game, I'm coming back for 1 more year. And then later that offseason, Luke had to kind of make a second, hey, I'm actually still coming back announcement because there were so many heavy rumors that actually Tennessee was recruiting him and trying to get him in the transfer portal. And when he finally kind of shut the door on that possibility, he made another I'm coming back announcement, and now he's playing Tennessee in the bowl game. So just very interesting. He's got plenty of interaction with Vol fans, I guess you could say at this point, but he's been consistent. Luke came to Illinois from Ole Miss, so he has some SEC experience. He's from Starkville, Mississippi, so he grew up in SEC country. He got to Illinois, and his first year in 23 was just okay. Illinois missed a bowl game that year, and it wasn't great. And then 24 was kind of a prove-it year of like, okay, what can this guy do for us? Is he the guy? And he was terrific last year, and he's really built off that this year. I would tell you, too, looking at some of Luke's numbers, a few of his picks, I'm always on the sideline filming the games, and a few of his picks, as we pull them up, if he's got 5 interceptions, I would say at least 2 of those, he won't say it, but I'll say it with him. That might have been, maybe could have been caught by his receiver. But he's been really solid. Probably more of a dual threat than maybe some people realize. He's not a guy that's going to, have 28 carries in a game and run for 200 yards on you. But he can take off and run when he needs it. Actually, we've seen Illinois do a little bit more of that down the stretch this season than maybe they did, even in the first part of conference play.
Right. They won 2 of their last 3 games to close out the year. However, the offense did not seem to hum as much as it did earlier
Right.
in the season. I think I read where Allmeyer had a 16 QBR against Northwestern, which Northwestern traditionally has a really strong defense there. So what are some of the ways that you think that this team will try to make a pivot to maybe springboard and use this last game of the season in the bowl game for 2026?
The only thing I'll note about that Northwestern game is I think there was about 8 inches of snow on the ground,
That's
so they
true,
weren't throwing
yeah.
the football. They weren't throwing the football too much for that one. But you're right. Actually, there was games I think when Illinois beat USC, like that was a really big win, and the offense looked terrific. And I think that maybe was Luke Altmaier's career high in passing yards. And so they've been good. They've been a little bit inconsistent, and honestly, you can't put it all in one spot, but I think maybe some of the inconsistency has come from the offensive line. I mean, this team beat USC, and then lost to Wisconsin. How does that happen? And it was just kind of Wisconsin had a really good defensive line that kind of took it to Illinois. And I tell people, too, people say, how did this team lose to Wisconsin? You know, how did Wisconsin steal a win against Illinois? I don't think Wisconsin stole it. I was at that game. Wisconsin beat them, and that was an ugly loss for Illinois. That was Illinois' O-line not playing well enough, and Illinois' defense certainly not playing well enough against a Wisconsin offense that had been terrible all year. But I think for this group, they have a number of receivers that they'll throw to. Colin Dixon and Hank Beatty would be the 2 biggest names, but I think the more they can get more guys involved there. And then they got 3 running backs that they'll use. And it's been an interesting dynamic to say, who's it going to be this time? You know, there have been all 3 guys probably throughout the season. There's been a time where I said, I wonder if that guy's not very happy. He's not getting enough carries. And the next week he'll have 18 carries for 212 yards or something. And so they got 3 running backs to prepare for. I think that can make things tricky. But you guys mentioned it. It all starts and it all ends with Luke Altmaier.
AJ Brown, take notes.
Yeah, I know.
About knocking the ball.
I know. We always like to hear from the veteran coaches about the big picture topics in college football, opt-outs being one. Here's head coach Brent Bielema.
Yeah, well, I've already had Gabe, Luke, JC, a couple other guys. I kind of concentrated this week on my guys that were in their last window or having to make major decisions. I've always just kind of given facts and data and information and kind of let them, see how they feel, right? I know there's a lot of voices that go into it. I think it's really cool now. Everybody wants to talk about the timing and all that goes into it. Obviously, CFP got announced today, and I fully expect us to be in those conversations in the years ahead. But for where we were at, it kind of allowed us to take a deep breath this week. We lifted them twice. Met with them on Tuesday. Had a victory dinner on Tuesday night. Was absolutely awesome. We got this week until Wednesday, and then they kick into finals till that next Wednesday. We'll do some fun things. Just a simple thing. We'll take these guys to eat at the ribeye. Like that's like a big deal to them. So all these little for us all the way up until the 20th. Once school gets out, you kind of got to keep them occupied a little bit. So I'm already setting up practice around something where we can watch the CFP on the 19th and 20th, maybe something together. So yeah, just. I think to play these guys, but also for these seniors that got a decision to make, like you just don't get these moments very much anymore. It was funny. We have a couple guest captains that came in this year, and a lot of guys that have played in the NFL, and they just always make reference to the friendships they make and bonded while they're here is more than any time when their college or their NFL career. And I really try to get those guys to understand and appreciate that.
Glenn, I'm sure you probably expected that this question was going to be coming, but SEC fans, if they watched last year's bowl game, Brett Bielema had a little bit of a reaction. He had a little bit of an altercation with Shane Beamer. Do you expect anything like that this time around? I mean, I don't think Josh Heupel's as outgoing as Shane Beamer is.
Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic because, man, we had the press conference, the day before or 2 days before, and they're both sitting there with a bucket of Cheez-Its in the middle, talking about how the great respect they have for each other, and then the next day or a couple days later, I thought they were going to rip each other's heads off, and so that was an interesting one for sure. I would be surprised if we got anything that eventful. I guess if Tennessee tries to pull off a trick play on the kickoff or something like that, maybe, but no, I don't think we'll have. Although maybe that was, what's the old saying, any PR is good PR. Maybe that was good. Both programs kind of, people were talking about Illinois and South Carolina at least on that day. So brought a little bit more attention. But we'll hope for maybe a little bit less controversy on the sidelines or on on either sideline. I guess it was kind of expanded to both last year.
Yeah, these coaches have elephant brains, though. They remember everything. And you just listen to these guys all the time, so I won't be a bit surprised if there's a little something. Maybe that doesn't escalate to what we saw last year, but there's a little something here or there. Like maybe like if one of the signal calls in an audible from the quarterbacks, just like this. I mean, just something small like that would be hilarious.
I mean, hey, like I mentioned it earlier, but but Tennessee went after Luke Altmaier, Illinois' quarterback, pretty good in the portal. And so I don't think Bielema was going to storm the other sideline for it. But I won't be surprised if Illinois can pull out a win in this one, if post-game Bielema has something to say about, like, yeah, you could see why they wanted my quarterback so bad, but they couldn't have. Something like that. You know, you never a little jab one way or another. You never know. Maybe we'll see it.
I'm kind of rooting to hear that. I know we're an SEC show, but, you know, I always like to.
Oh, me too.
I always love when the coaches, you know, stir up the drama and give us some good what are those? What are those?
Some quotables and
what's the thing that the youngins say nowadays? Tea, is that what it is?
Oh, the tea.
The tea.
Well, speaking of Tennessee playing in the state, or Illinois playing in the state of Tennessee, the football team also wants to follow the basketball team, who had some success there in Nashville, knocking off the Tennessee Volunteers. What do you make there of that game and being able to come on the road and knock off a ranked team, but then also to come into a hostile environment where, like we said earlier, it's a neutral site, but really in the hometown and in the home neck of the woods of the Vols?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with that you mentioned, because I actually will say, now to be fair, it's all orange, so it's like, it's hard to say what percentage of that was Tennessee and what percentage of that was Illinois. But I will say there were some Illinois fans there. I'm not going to say it was 50-50, but I don't think it was 90-10 either. So it actually felt like a neutral site game, which I was impressed. I think it helped. It was a Saturday. Champaign to Nashville is about 5 hours. I think a lot of people just made a little weekend out of it. Yeah. It was a night game, so really, if you had to work Friday, you could have got up early in the morning Saturday and drove down from Central Illinois. So it was, like I said, it wasn't 50-50, but it wasn't all Tennessee fans. That was a good win for Illinois, though, and that was a needed win for Illinois. Illinois is scheduled really hard in the non-conference, and it played Texas Tech, beat Texas Tech, but then lost to UConn and lost to Alabama, speaking of SEC. And so you're 1-2 in those tough non-cons going into that game. You really don't want to be 1-3. They have one more left. It's on Monday, like I mentioned, they play Mizzou. But I think they go into that Mizzou game 2-2 in these really tough non-conference games, probably expecting and hoping to get a win on Monday and then go into conference play. Say we played five high major non-con games. We had a winning record in that. You can live with that. But Tennessee, I would say, is probably, I haven't kept up closely enough with what Texas Tech has done since that game. Tennessee's probably Illinois' best win yet. That was the Alabama game, they were close. It was very close, went down to the wire, and Illinois missed a bunch of free throws. But that was a prove-it game of like, okay, yeah, sure, we were close. Who cares? Let's go win one. And they got that one done. And then they smashed that guitar. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, we saw that. Yeah.
The poor guitar.
The poor guitar. Is the Big Ten back this year as a conference?
The SEC was so absolutely loaded last year. But I'll tell you this, man. Going into the season, obviously Purdue was one, and now I think Michigan's not one, but Michigan probably could be one. Michigan looks ridiculously good, insanely good. And obviously Michigan State's going to be a factor every year. Look at what UCLA did over the offseason. I don't know how they've stacked up as far as what they've done, but I know that their roster lacks no talent. And so I think the Big Ten has a number of teams that could make a run, and I was on record, and this might be crazy because of how Michigan has how good they've looked, but I was saying that I think the regular season Big Ten champ could have 5-6 conference losses maybe, and now there's a Michigan fan out there somewhere who for some reason is listening to this SEC show and gonna DM me, we're not losing 5 games, what are you talking about? And you know what, he's probably right, but I just think it's really deep. I don't think there's gonna be many easy wins. Nebraska has kind of been like Vanderbilt, basically. Those two teams just came out of nowhere and have all of a sudden decided they don't want to lose, so Nebraska just beat Illinois in Champaign. Yeah. Nebraska just beat Illinois in Champaign, and Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, the list goes on. And so I think it'll be a really interesting league to follow. I don't know if I'll make an official stance on back or not back, but I think Michigan fans would probably be a little bit more bold in their take than me.
Well, Glenn, I'll tell you this, because if there is a Michigan fan that wants to, yell at you, I'll have him direct their attention at me because we are having Michigan on later this show.
That's true.
So, you know, there is probably going to be someone that's like, no, that's crazy. So I'll just have them direct all of that negative attention to me, and, you know, I can handle
There you
it
go.
that way. That way you don't have to deal with it, you know?
There we go. Yeah, you guys can take some calls from angry Michigan fans if you want. I don't know why they would be too angry right now, at least about basketball.
blowing
Oh yeah,
everyone
blow
out.
everybody. I was about to say for the last 2 weeks, Patrick's been on the pulpit saying Michigan should be the #1 team in the country. As of right now, it's hard to argue that situation.
Right.
So the Big Ten should be a lot of fun to watch. Glenn, this was awesome.
Yes.
Can't wait to have you back on, man. This was great. Thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports
absolutely.
Plus.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
Absolutely. Glenn Kinley joining us from Champaign, Illinois. Lots of, as he mentioned, Illinois to SEC crossover, but also a lot of Big Ten to SEC crossover in the big picture. And as we wind down the non-conference part of the schedule, it'll be really interesting to see how those teams fare as they do go into league play.
I know you mentioned Brett Bielema might potentially, if they do win, say something about, hey, you guys wanted my quarterback, but I wonder if Luke Altmaier plays with an added edge here. That's going to be something that I look for.
Same. You know, and I didn't really think about that angle from, you know, him coming out of the SEC territory and being able to kind of put that flag down. But you're exactly right, and it could springboard something much bigger, much better for that football program as they move forward. Speaking of moving forward, we will do that with our show. Hour number 1 continues after the break. Stay with us. We're back here on Southeast Sports Plus. It's been really fun kind of stepping in and around the SEC footprint and getting kind of the opposite view from the teams that are not in this league but playing teams that are in the Southeastern Conference. We will do so once again. It's Nolan Knight joining us from Richmond, Virginia, as the Cavaliers get set for a really big matchup against Missouri in the Gator Bowl. Of course, we keep up with Missouri very closely. We want to get a look at the Virginia Cavaliers going into this matchup. First of all, thank you so much for joining us, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm stoked. I mean, what a great studio you guys have over there. I'm jealous. Y'all are. I feel like I'm on the big time now. This is cool.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. We got the show rolling early August, and
yeah, we're 4 months in.
Yeah, 4 months in. It's already in bowl season. It's absolutely insane. Take a look at this game as we break down this Gator Bowl. And we've talked a lot of Missouri here on this show. And now as we get ready for this game, what are some of the big things about Virginia from this season and the way they play towards the end of the year that you're really looking forward to as they close out the year in the Gator Bowl?
Yeah, it's just been a year to remember for UVA. I mean, you think of the past 3 seasons under Tony Elliott, and it's been ugly at times. Of course, they had the tragedy a few years back that kind of set them back when Tony Elliott kind of first got on campus. And then, they were picked to finish 14th in the preseasons at ACC Media Days. And there wasn't a whole lot of, positive outlook. The one positive going into the season when we were looking at things was, how manageable the schedule was, that if UVA put out a competitive team, then we thought there was a possibility that Virginia was going to be able to maybe make a bowl game for the first time since 2019. And then they surprised us all by winning a couple of games that, folks never thought they would. They beat Florida State when they were ranked 9th. And at the time, that was a huge win. Looking back now, maybe it doesn't mean as much because of the fall off that Florida State had. But at the time, it was kind of the turning point where, the fans even around Charlottesville and Richmond started to buy into the team. And as the season progressed, you saw that in the stands and the energy around the stadium. And what Virginia did really well was just finding a way to win games. It wasn't always pretty. They have 3 overtime wins. Their win against Washington State came with a safety with under 2 minutes to play, so essentially another overtime game for them. So they just kind of found ways to get wins on what was a manageable schedule. And obviously, I think the ACC would have liked if Virginia had won the ACC championship so they could have them in the mix instead of Duke. But it wasn't all that surprising that Virginia lost to Duke because they haven't been that dominant team, but they found ways to win games, and they finished the year with 9 wins and with an opportunity to maybe win a 10th.
Yeah, we'll talk about that ACC championship
or 11th.
game.
I think they already have 10 wins. But
I think they are. Yeah. We'll talk about the ACC championship game here in a minute. I'll go on record. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, Virginia fans probably don't want to talk about it. But you mentioned the Florida State game, and I'll go on record. This is probably one of the best field stormings I've ever seen. The history of field storms.
Yeah.
I mean, immediately after the ball hit the ground, they were already on the field. And you could say that was the game that did derail Florida State's season. So I don't want to take away anything from that win. But when you look at these good teams, a lot of times it does come down to the quarterback play. What have you made from Chandler Morris this year?
Yeah, when he plays well, Virginia plays well. I mean, the whole entire offense kind of relies on him. Now, they have a great running back as well in Jamari Taylor that I think helps Morris out. His numbers don't really jump off of the screen at you, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, but he's nearly thrown for 3,000 yards. He's had a really impressive season and is the large part of the reason that UVA has had so much success this year. He was at North Texas last year, kind of an underrated guy in the transfer portal. Virginia got him. And as we all know, if you have a good quarterback, you have a chance to win games. And that's the case with Chandler Morris. He can extend the play really well. Doesn't have a whole lot of rushing yards this season, but he's got a couple of big runs. Like, he's got the ability. I think he had a 42-yard rush earlier this year, 28, 18-yard rush. So although he's not known primarily as a scrambler, his ability to extend the play has put Virginia in some good situations. But then there's been some times where he's extended a play and things have gone poorly. So Virginia does well if he does well, and they struggle if he doesn't do so well, as what we saw in the Wake Forest game that Virginia had, their surprising loss at the end of the year.
Yeah, you both touched on that ACC championship game. Let's revisit that for just a heartbeat here. I think a lot of people, and maybe if you're giving some truth serum to those in the ACC offices, they really did probably want either a different matchup or Virginia to win that game. What was it about not only this league but that game that felt that the entire league felt a little off to where it seemed like for a heartbeat until Miami got in that there might not even be a team to represent in the college football playoff?
Yeah, well, I think the big problem with the whole thing was the ACC's tiebreakers.
Yes,
the fact
sure.
that Duke even had the opportunity to play for an ACC championship with 5 losses was just ridiculous. And not to get into the tiebreaker too much, but they didn't play any of the other teams other than Virginia that they were tied with, and somehow, they got into the situation. Virginia deserved to be in the ACC championship game. They managed their schedule. They won games that mattered. They weren't a part of the tiebreaker. They were securely in. And if it was Virginia versus Miami or Virginia versus Georgia Tech, I think, it would have been a pretty competitive team that comes out of the ACC to go to the college football playoffs. It doesn't work out that way. And then obviously we get Miami in, which is obviously a kind of a sigh of relief, like you mentioned, that the ACC is going to have a competitive team, because the ACC eats itself alive every year. This is not new. This happens all the time. It's a really good league. The bottom's always, poor, as many conferences are. But the top, there's never been, even maybe back when, Florida State, Clemson, now that they've been struggling, there's not been that top dog that's going to eat through wins year in and year out. And instead what you have is the ACC eating itself alive, really competitive games, really competitive teams. It's just they just look poor on paper because of the losses that they have to each other.
Yeah, and it really showed itself there in the championship game, fittingly so, as you mentioned, this being a dog-eat-dog world. Let's hear from head coach Tony Elliott on the last play of the ACC title game.
The 15-yard penalty there that carried over in overtime kind of puts you in that friend zone where you're trying to get a chunk play. And so that's where you have most of your plays like that designed in that area. So it kind of puts you back there. But I'm sure that we all want that play back, but their guy made a play, and hats off to Duke for winning the game.
Nolan, obviously it was a tough loss for Virginia in that game and the way that it ended in overtime. But in my opinion, what I see a lot on the college basketball side of things is, for example, a team misses the tournament and then goes to the NIT and then kind of just lays an egg, so to speak, in the first round and is a first-round exit. Do you expect this Virginia team to be focused or still kind of dwelling on, man, we just missed the playoff?
I think what's impressed me so far is especially with the recent news with the Missouri quarterback, is the fact that nobody's entered the transfer portal. They've had 5 guys entered. And I was looking at it earlier today. None of them really played all that much. Probably one guy that saw a lot of action, Deshaun Prevard, entered the portal. He's really the only guy that had significant minutes this year for UVA. So it seems like everyone's bought in. Chandler Morris, I think, applied for an extra year of eligibility. So the excitement around UVA is absolutely there, and they surprised themselves this year, I think, with their success, and that's brought even more energy into the Virginia Cavaliers program. I mean, this is the best season they've had since 1990. So it's all this excitement is coming at the right time, and there's some serious momentum around the Cavaliers program, and I think that's probably why we haven't seen that many players enter the portal and seem to be excited about the opportunity to play in quite frankly, a prestigious bowl game like the Gator Bowl.
Yeah, it's a Gator Bowl against a really good team, and you see right there and one of their running backs, and they have 2 really good ones, really led by Ahmad Hardy, and this is a team that really likes to run the football, and I'm not sure where Missouri's headspace is going into this game as well, a lot like Virginia, but it feels like 2 teams that can really use a win to springboard into next season, and with real confidence, not just a lot of hot air like it is for a lot of teams. Defensively for this Virginia team, what do you want to see from these guys as they take on a team that will really try to run the football right at you?
Yeah, Virginia defensively has looked a lot different over the past few weeks. Cam Robinson was kind of their top dog at linebacker all season. I mean, there was talks 6 or 7 weeks into the year that he could be the ACC Player of the Year, the way that he played. He got the big safety against Washington State that secured a win. He's out for the rest of the year, and you've seen that defensively for Virginia. They've taken a step back ever since he's been off the field. They have a pretty good secondary. Ethan Minters, their starting safety. He's from the Richmond area and is a stud back there. Devin Neal was a transplant at safety as well. He's been really good this season. Tony Elliott did a really good job in the portal last year. They brought in Mitchell Melton, a defensive end, won a state or rather national championship with Ohio State last year, and their defense incredibly improved from a year ago, but definitely has taken a step back since the loss of Cam Robinson and all ACC back.
Nolan, I mean, we'll spin it forward to next year's schedule here real quick before we let you go. I know there's a lot of talk about some ACC teams playing 8 games, some ACC teams playing 9 games in conference, and the whole tiebreaker is wonky. You know, I'm an ACC guy at heart, so I'm just as shocked as everyone else is. But when you look at the schedule, I mean, it looks pretty manageable outside of Syracuse at home. And then away, you've got Virginia Tech, Florida State, SMU. But the one that really sticks out to me is NC State in Brazil. What's the hype around the program with that one?
I don't know. It kind of came out, and then nobody really reported on it, or it wasn't official, right, for a few weeks. And so there was kind of this, question marks. Is this really going to happen? And then it comes out this week that game is now going to be a conference game, because you might remember earlier this year Virginia had lost to NC State, but it was a non-conference game that they just wanted to schedule against each other. Now that turns into an official conference game. I don't know if they're going to send me down to Brazil. I mean, that would be pretty cool. I don't know much Portuguese, but
do you have your passport?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
yes,
I'd have the passport. I just need the will. I need the way, not the will.
It'll be great stuff. I hope you get down there. Is it played in the same stadium where the Chiefs and Chargers open up this year? I'm guessing it's the same venue.
Yeah, I guess so. There's not that many details. It's kind of this futuristic, what's going to happen with this thing? It's going to look
nobody's
strange.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they got the turf situation figured out, because I remember that was a problem 2 years ago with the Eagles game.
Yeah. Hopefully that all works out and you get a nice trip there to Rio or wherever in Brazil this game will be played. Nolan, this is neither here nor there, but I was born in Fairfax, Virginia, and about 2 years ago, Virginia would lose every bet that I had. So Virginia was on my no bet list forever. It was just like, whether I was betting on them or fading them, they would find a way to make me lose money all the time. So I feel a kinship to Virginia because of where I was born. I feel a kinship, an extended kinship, because now you've been on this program and you were great. But I'll continue not to bet on Virginia in this game, for or against there in the Gator Bowl.
Yeah, they've been hard to predict for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Nolan, thank you so much for your time here. We really appreciate it here on Southeast Sports Plus.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Nolan Knight joining us from Richmond, Virginia. And I hope for his sake he gets a nice little trip out there to Brazil to not only enjoy Brazil, but cover a football game.
That would be nice. I mean, that's just, I feel like no one's talking about it. And he brings up a good point. I was like, okay, I know we have the Ireland game every year. And
right.
There's a game in Brazil and nobody's talking about it. So I'm sure once, we get into the thick of the offseason where there's nothing to talk about, somebody's going to be like, Brazil game, let's everybody talk about this and why this is amazing for the sport.
I like the mystique of Virginia and NC State just being that weird, what the heck is this game? Last year, it's an ACC game. That wasn't an ACC game. This year, it's just going to be played out there by the Jesus statue out there in Rio, Brazil. We appreciate both Nolan Knight and Glenn Kinley on a fantastic first hour here of Southeast Sports Plus. Hour number 2. We'll continue. We have one more segment to go before then. Stay with us.
Closing up hour number 1 here on Southeast Sports Plus. Here's a look at the SEC bowl selections. These are all the non-college football playoff bowl games. We just talked with Nolan Knight about the number 19 Virginia Cavaliers taking on the Mizzou Tigers in the Gator Bowl. No Bo Perbula. That just came out this morning, so presumably Matt Zoller's at quarterback for Mizzou, and then LSU taking on number 21 Houston in the Texas Bowl. That's basically a home game for Houston, since that will be at NRG Stadium where the Texans play. Moving right along here, Tennessee will face Illinois for the second time in as many sports in Nashville there on December 30th. And then number 23 Iowa facing number 14 Vanderbilt in the ReliaQuest Bowl on New Year's Eve. One of those interesting bowl games where, you know, we've been talking about this Vanderbilt offense all year, but that Iowa defense has been so good for so long. So that'll definitely be an interesting matchup here. And then a matchup that we'll talk about in hour number 2 with both Ian Kress and Roger Weiss after some breaking news coming out of Austin, Texas. Number 18 Michigan facing number 13 Texas in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. And then an interesting one over there in Charlotte, the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah.
Wake Forest facing Mississippi State. Usually it's a Big 12 team, but with multiple Big 12 teams opting out of bowl games, you know, Mississippi State was like, yeah, at 5-7, we'll opt into a bowl game. So I'd be interested to see what Kamario Taylor could do for Mississippi State in that game, because I'm assuming they'll roll with him instead of Blake Shapen.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Shapen was dealing with some injuries all year long, and you want him to be healthy for next year. So Coach Levy will shift things up a little bit there as they happily took that bowl game. Coming up next here on hour number 2, we'll talk a lot, as you mentioned, some big breaking news out of the one of the blue blood programs, and I think it's kind of news on both sides, what happened on the front end, but also what ended up happening there on the back end for a program that I think people will have a lot of expectations for going into next season.
Yeah, and we'll save that for hour 2, and as we always do on the show, we got to make some predictions.
Let's do it. I love it.
We just got to make some predictions since next week will be Christmas. Number 19 Virginia facing Mizzou. The Tigers are 7-point favorites. Last time I checked, I would honestly expect that number to go down now with the news that Bo Perbula is entering the transfer portal.
Correct. Yeah, I think once that news goes into the market, there will be a lot more Virginia money.
Yeah.
I think I like Virginia here in this matchup, and like I told Nolan a moment ago, whether it is betting for or against Virginia, they always seem to burn me. So I take that with a grain of salt, because wherever I go on Virginia, it seems to if you fade me, that's the winning side of the bet.
You know, I do want to take Virginia. The ACC in me is like, yes, take the Cavaliers. They're having a great year. You know, this is a turnaround year for Tony Elliott, but I gotta say the two-headed monster of Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts is going to be too much for that defense. I think Matt Stallers is going to have a nice – this will be his way to ease himself in. Kind of like – I know Tennessee fans aren't going to like when I say this, but 2 years ago when Nico Amalieva played in the bowl game instead of Joe Milton.
Milton.
And that was kind of Nico's way of, you know, easing his way into college football.
Correct.
And then he had a decent year last year.
Right.
I think that's going to be the same for Matt Zollers. LSU taking on Houston.
This is one of those interesting games. You and I, when we were on the road yesterday and we were crowning our high school player of the year, it's like, what is the motivation for LSU going into this matchup? Right? And even more so now where the interim coach has he's going to Ole Miss.
Like, he doesn't care.
I just think that there's a lot of distractions. Might be too strong of a word, because I think LSU is building something. But just for this particular game, I see it meaning more to Houston than it does to the Tigers.
Yeah,
I got Houston.
I just don't see it. I really don't. I mean, I think Houston is going to win this game because LSU is just going to want to get this season over with, and then they can get into the Lane Kiffin area. Moving right along here quickly, Iowa and Vanderbilt.
I'll go Vandy. This is a team that I feel like is on a mission. They want to finish strong. I'll go with Vanderbilt.
I got Vandy as well. Michigan and Texas.
I think Texas. I like the way they're rolling right now, and I really like the way they're rolling into 2026.
Too much distraction around Michigan. And then Wake Forest, Mississippi State.
This game will mean a lot to Mississippi State. I know it's a new quarterback, but I like the Bulldogs.
Kamario Taylor, learn the name. He's going to have a really nice game against Wake Forest.
Okay, Kamario Taylor will do his thing there in that bowl game. Hour number 2 of Southeast Sports Plus continues with huge news next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we continue our look into some of the big bowl games, and one of the biggest bowl games from a brand perspective, Michigan and Texas. But we have been talking almost everything but the actual 60 minutes that will be played on the football field. Of course, some interesting dynamics going on with Michigan over the last couple of weeks. Some interesting dynamics for Texas that we'll get into here over this next hour on Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh, and we are really happy to not only break this game down, break it down with some of our friends around Next Star Nation, but one of the things that really comes out is when you get excited for bowls, a lot of times I just look at the logos, and when these two logos were side by side, I was like, this will be a lot of fun, but we're not talking about the game.
No, I mean, this is what you would typically call a brand bowl.
Yeah.
You know, with Michigan and Texas being some of the biggest brands in college football, but with the news coming out of Ann Arbor about Sharon Moore, and now today coming out of Austin, Texas, about some coaching changes. I mean, I'm forgetting that we actually have to play the game because I bet both of these teams just want to get to next season already.
Right, is exactly right. And both these teams kind of come in with similar situations, really high-profile young quarterbacks coming into this game. Bryce Underwood there for the Michigan Wolverines. We're so excited to be joined once again by our friend Ian Kress to break this one all down. Ian, this is a really exciting matchup, I think, once the game kicks off, but we have had a lot of noise surrounding these two programs outside of that as you break down what Michigan is going through from an off-field perspective as they try to prepare for this one. There's really no handbook, there's no outlet, there's no other way to really handle these kinds of things. What's your take on the way the Wolverines have handled the last week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a unique situation, one that these players never thought they would be in. Last week, I was talking with one of the beat writers for the Detroit Free Press, and he described it as the players were shell-shocked when they found the news out about Sharon Moore being fired and then arrested a few hours later. And then Biff Poggi, the interim coach, talked on Monday down in Orlando ahead of the Citrus Bowl and basically said that the players felt betrayed. I don't know who exactly they felt like betrayed them, but it seems like maybe it was more a Sharon Moore situation than maybe the university. But, it's just an odd situation, probably tough for a lot of people to put their head around everything that's happened over the last week in a day, I would say. So it's a little odd right now. Michigan players have not spoken with the media since this news came out. Actually, within the last half hour, Michigan did send out a media advisory email saying that they're going to have a few players speak on Friday, but they did put a note in the email that the players are not able to comment on the circumstances that have taken place. And so it's basically just going to be a lot of focus on the game against Texas, which I'm sure that's what Michigan wants, but I'm sure there will be a few reporters that try to just ask, like, how are you guys doing? Like, this whole situation is unique. Like, how have you handled it? And so we haven't gotten that perspective yet, but Biff Poggi basically said that a lot of them did feel betrayed and shocked, and it's kind of a situation they're all just learning to go through right now.
Yeah, for those of us that don't cover that program particularly, your last statement kind of hit my question right there on the head as far as I'm sure there's going to be a company line, so to speak, about the way to handle all these things. And there are legal ramifications that actually do completely make sense. But how honest and forthright do you feel like these players can be just about their overall mental state, knowing, especially guys that have been there for 3 years, is 2 coaching changes, about to be a 3rd, and just a lot of turmoil that you don't necessarily see from a college football playing experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the players are not going to answer questions about like, oh, did you know about the relationship between Sharon Moore and that type of stuff. So I feel like, yeah, that's fair to say like that would be off the record. But I think it is fair for media members to ask like, how are you guys trying to get through this, and what's sort of been like the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself and the team and like coming together and that type of stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting tomorrow of what they have to say. But as someone who too also we cover a lot of Michigan State, they've had a few issues over the last few years with Mel Tucker and a few other things, but Michigan State's always been up front and center and have taken on the questions, whether it's the athletic director, the president at the time when Mel Tucker was fired. They had a press conference the day after Mel Tucker was suspended. We still have not heard from Michigan athletic director Ward Manuel. So it's kind of a weird situation in Ann Arbor. They're not exactly, I would say, media friendly when it comes to certain things. I don't want to say like they like to hide things, but they certainly try to stay away from media when they can, just to not let stuff get out there, I guess.
If you're Biff Poggi, how do you get your players to rally around you and go and play in this game against a team that's as good as Texas that just barely missed the college football playoff with 3 losses?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for Biff Poggi, the good thing is that he's already been the interim coach this season. Sharon Moore was suspended for 2 games, so Poggi, he's already had that experience of leading this team. They seem to really like him. You see clips of his press conferences and whatnot, and he seems like a fun guy to be around. And so I do think the players will embrace him as the interim coach for the next 2 weeks or however long it goes. Who knows? Maybe he is their next head coach. But it does seem like the players have embraced Biff Poggi as their guy for right now, just based on what happened throughout the season and how the players really liked playing for him, especially Bryce Underwood seemed to enjoy it during that Nebraska game and then Central Michigan as well. And so I do think they'll enjoy these next few weeks the best they can, and hopefully football is in a way a distraction from all those outside noises of the Sharon Moore mess.
You brought up Bryce Underwood, and he's been the hot commodity here as of late because, the social media people were just digging around his profile, and I know he took Michigan out of his social media, which, I mean, you could do with that information what you would like with a teenager and social media and stuff like that. But would you expect Bryce Underwood to return next year, or is there some concern around the program if they don't find the right head coach that he might leave?
Yeah, I guess it depends on who they bring in, but I think he would stay. I think the quarterback position is kind of weird to be bouncing around from place to place. Obviously, this is a weird situation with the coaching staff being fired, but typically I think if you're a quarterback, you want to stay in a system that's the same year in and year out. You don't want to jump around to all these different places that do different things, because then you're taking all this time to learn the playbook and the progressions and all this stuff. When Bryce is a sophomore, he feels more comfortable with the way Michigan does things. So I think he would stay. Obviously, if they bring in a coach who has a quarterback that they really like, then maybe that changes things. But I think right now it seems like Underwood would remain in East Lansing.
One of the big things.
In Ann Arbor.
No, I know. Yeah. I think a lot of Michigan State fans were like, "Whoa, we're about to go get him."
Yeah.
I know what you meant. We knew we knew what you meant. This is a really interesting quarterback matchup between these two, because if you were just to project, given what they were able to do in high school, for both Bryce Underwood and Arch Manning, you're thinking, oh, well, this in a decade will be a great NFL battle between these two quarterbacks here in this matchup. As they get ready for the bowl game, and as Michigan gets ready for an Arch Manning that we have seen his ups and downs, what are the things you're maybe thinking that this team is preparing for in the offseason or in this bowl preparation for Steve Sarkisian and Arch?
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan's preparing for a very good quarterback who has gotten better, I think, throughout the season. Obviously, he had his few games where he struggled early in the year, but I do think Michigan's going to be prepared for a very solid quarterback play in Arch Manning. So I think they'll be ready for that. It is a fun matchup. Arch Manning, Bryce Underwood, guys who were viewed as top-ranked quarterbacks in their classes over the last few years and who could easily be Heisman contenders in a year. So I think it could be a good preview of what's to come for the future in the NFL, even in college next year. And so I think it should be a fun matchup, especially on paper. I guess to the weather, maybe in Florida, we'll see how that impacts things. If it's a rainy day down there in Orlando, maybe it leads to more runs. But if it's a sunny day, I'm looking forward to seeing the two quarterbacks just throw it around.
As you mentioned, Ian, Coach Pogge was in the Sunshine State over there in Orlando, talking about the game and what fans can expect.
I think what Orlando can expect from us is that our fans travel, and there will be quite a few Michigan fans, and I'm sure the Texas fans travel too. So it ought to be a great environment. I can tell you that Texas is it's iconic, right? Just like Michigan, the brand is iconic. Maybe the two most iconic brands, going back in college football. I know our kids have a great deal of respect for Texas, and I have a great deal of respect for Steve and his staff. I mean, they're going to be actually. I was hoping and praying they would be in the CFP, so they're not, and we'll have to deal with that.
I think that's one of the more interesting things that I've ever heard a coach say. Usually when coaches talk about the other teams, they don't really give up too much. It kind of sounds like Biff was really hoping that Texas would have made the CFP so that way he didn't have to play them. I don't think I've ever recalled a coach actually kind of openly admitting that.
Like rooting for your opponent to be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, that's a new one. I mean, I don't know if Michigan knew that's who they were going to play if Texas didn't get in, but yeah, it's. I think Texas would probably be favored. I haven't looked at how that all has played out in terms of betting and all that stuff.
7.5.
But it does seem like. Is it okay? Yeah, I would put. I think Texas was rightfully the favorite. So we'll see how Michigan is in the right mind space with everything going on, but they certainly will be up for the challenge. I'm sure maybe they want to prove themselves and play with a little chip on their shoulder on New Year's Eve.
Ian, one more question before we flip over to basketball. We'll talk about Bryce Underwood here real quick. If you were to give a letter grade for his first season in college football, what would you give him and why?
I would say a B-. I mean, obviously it was not perfect, but I think if you talk to any reasonable person, they kind of knew it wasn't going to be perfect. There's a big difference from high school to college, and it doesn't matter if you're viewed as the most talented freshman quarterback ever. There's always going to be an adjustment period, and it's always going to be, challenging. And so I think we saw that at times with Bryce, where it looked like he was a true freshman quarterback. The Ohio State game is a great example. And then you also had a lot of times when he showed the skills of why he was viewed as the top player in the class last year. So I think it was an adjustment for him at certain times. Michigan obviously is a program that likes to run the ball more than throw the ball. So I think that was something that was maybe didn't best go to what Bryce's skill set was. He's a guy who has a powerful arm, and at times you just didn't see it. So I don't know if that was more the play calling or what, but I would say a B-. And if he's back in Ann Arbor next year, I would expect him to take another leap.
Sorry, one more question on football, because I know the SEC people down here will want to know. Any update on Justice Haynes?
We have not heard much. Like I said, Michigan hasn't done a whole lot of media avail leading up to this. Maybe he goes, maybe he doesn't. I'm not totally sure. But yeah, that's I guess all I got right now.
Yeah, no problem there. One thing that is good to go is the college basketball up there in Michigan. 2 of the top 9 teams in the country who reside there in your state. We'll start with the Wolverines before we head over to the Spartans. I'll tell you what, and I'll give Patrick the credit for this, because he has been saying for the last 2 weeks, he's like, this is the best basketball team in the country by far. Obviously, Arizona's right there as well. This is a team that's absolutely just blowing good teams, not just teams, but blowing good teams off the court. What's the secret sauce there for the guys there in Ann Arbor, and not just the results, but the way they're getting them?
Yeah, I just think they're a team that has a lot of matchup problems for other teams. I mean, their size is different than a lot of teams with Yaxel, Lendeborg, Merez Johnson. I mean, they have size at all positions, and I think they're built to really blow out teams the way they play. Obviously, you saw against Maryland, it was a little closer in the first half, and then Maryland had a player get injured, a player get ejected for 2 flagrant fouls, and so Michigan was able to take advantage and really pull away. But yeah, the way they're playing is just very impressive. They play intense defense, and they are a team, too, that can make a lot of shots. They can get to the basket, use their size to their advantage, and, Dusty May has really a coaching style that really just allows Michigan to play like they don't want to take their foot off the gas. They are just a team that's going to go at you all 60 minutes. They don't let up, and that's why you've seen these huge blowouts against even teams like Gonzaga out in Las Vegas. I think that was their most impressive win, and so it has been impressive, and they certainly look like not just the Big Ten favorites, but certainly the national championship favorites right now. It's early, but we'll see.
Ian, I feel like a couple years ago, Michigan tried their hardest to get a guard from North Carolina in Caleb Love, and it just didn't work out. He wasn't able to make it there to Ann Arbor. Ended up going over to Arizona. Well, they tried their luck again with Elliot Cadeau. What have you been able to make of his performance so far early this season?
Yeah, I think the big knock on him was just like his shooting when he came to Michigan. Like, I think he was a guy that knew how to dish the ball, get a lot of assists, and he's been very impressive when it comes to his shooting. I mean, he's been making his shots from behind the arc. He's still showing off his ability to make plays with his assists. And so I think he's just been the point guard they were looking for. He doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. That was Michigan's Achilles heel last year, is they had this great size, they had a lot of skill, but they lost the games they lost because they turned the ball over all the time. And now this team takes care of the ball a lot more, and that's allowed them to just really keep their foot on a team's throat and just go at them.
We heard from Coach May on his star, Elliot Cadeau.
He's special. I mean, his ability to manipulate the defense, I think even now he's just learning his teammates better. I mean, that's probably the most underrated part of all of this is guys get used to hooping with other guys, and I think he's getting used to who likes it here, who wants it there. Also more familiar with our system. We play differently than he played last couple of years. They have a very unique system that they score a lot of points and it's good ball, but ours is just different, and so I think a lot of it is just the guys are getting used to playing with each other, where we didn't have that prep time for a number of reasons. But I don't know if anyone in college basketball will ever have the stability where they just roll out a team with great continuity early in the season anyway. But I think these guys have done it as well as anyone, with especially factoring in we've only been here a year.
I don't want to create any next star on next star battles here, but Glenn Kinley came on our show earlier. He covers Illinois. And he said that it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world here. I could see that the champion of the Big Ten has 5, 6, maybe 7 losses going into the year. Do you see this Michigan team losing 5, 6, 7 games in conference? I know we're going into that part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, conference play is always different in the Big Ten. Those environments are intense on the road. You saw it at Maryland on Saturday. But the way Michigan's playing, I do not see them getting 5 losses in the Big Ten. Right. You know, they're a team that I think they could win the Big Ten. Maybe they fall twice. You know, I think that could be maybe the way things go for them, the way they're playing right now. Obviously, injuries could change all that, and history shows that the Big Ten champion typically has like 5 to 6 losses. Yeah. It's just the way it has been. You know, Michigan State won it by 3 games last year, and they still had, I believe it was like 4 or 5 losses in conference play. Right. And so I think with the way Michigan is, that they'll probably maybe fall once or twice, but that would be it. I don't see them losing 5 or more games in conference play because of the way they just are built.
You've always been kind to us and gracious with your time, man. From New York back home there to East Lansing, we always appreciate here at Southeast Sports Plus. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, brother. Ian Kress joining us from Michigan. And I'll tell you what, he's got a really good basketball team over there. And not to mention the other team in the state, and they're right there in East Lansing. Coach Izzo and company are in the top 10.
You know, it just feels like every year you don't know exactly what you're going to get on the gridiron, because obviously when we look at Michigan State, they just haven't really been what they used to be ever since Kenneth Walker went to the NFL, and then Michigan dealing with all the controversy here in the last few years. But you can always expect the basketball to be pretty good there.
They are living up to their side of the bargain. That is for absolute sure, as they continue to go into Big Ten play. Keep it here on Southeast Sports Plus. We head over to Texas. Huge news, and a familiar face returns to Austin. We break it down next. We are back here on Southeast Sports Plus, and we had to call a quick audible, and thankful for our very nimble friend Roger Wallace joining us here from Austin, because some huge news out today. Steve Sarkisian and company looking to bolster up that coaching staff, and I'll tell you what, bringing in a former SEC head coach, a longtime defensive coordinator, yes, ties to Nick Saban and others. Tell us about the big news there in the Lone Star State.
Yeah, this one caught everyone off guard, and that's saying something in 2025 when there was no hints of this. But Will Muschamp, new defensive coordinator. Pete Kwiatkowski out at Texas after 5 years. He came with Sark He was at Washington, and Muschamp, who was at Texas from 2008 to 2010, when he dropped a bomb when he went to Florida as the head coach at the end of the season. That 2010 season was a losing season for Texas, and Muschamp had been named the head coach in waiting for Mac Brown
right
the previous year, and he was set to take over when Mac Brown was going to retire, but instead he got that Florida opportunity. He's been out of coaching for a year. He's very close with Kirby Smart. He spent time on that Georgia staff after he was let go at South Carolina. He went from Florida to South Carolina as head coach, and Muschamp coming back to Texas where he was wildly popular. Now, he was here in a great time, 2008 season, where they were a Michael Crabtree play away from potentially playing for a national title. 2009 season, obviously played for a national title. And then the year after Colt McCoy left, things went south on Texas, and Muschamp got that opportunity to go to Florida. But, yeah, this one catching everybody by surprise today because the defense has been kind of where Texas has leaned the last couple of years under Pete Kwiatkowski. This year, a few more cracks, especially in the second half of the season. But clearly there's more to this than, what we know on the surface. And Sark and Muschamp don't have a lot of ties together. Muschamp has some ties to Nick Saban, so but doesn't everybody, right?
Yeah.
So, and Muschamp and Kirby Smart are good friends as well. So this was interesting, and also the other part of it is Dwayne Aquina has been let go. He came for 1 year as the safeties coach back to Texas. He was on the staff with Muschamp here as well, so looking to fill that slot. But the big news, obviously, Pete Kwiatkowski out as defensive coordinator, Will Muschamp in as defensive coordinator as Texas gets ready to play a bowl game next week that now everybody's forgotten about against Michigan with this news today.
Yeah, no question. You actually you read my mind perfectly, because one of the first things I thought of with Will Muschamp and Steve Sarkisian, I did the mental game of I was trying to put them, were they ever on the same staff? And like, okay, they never have been. They were on opposite sides of the country. They were still wildly successful when Sark was out west and Coach Muschamp was at Nick Saban's hip. And it felt like maybe that tie with Coach Saban might have been maybe the catalyst for this. But as you mentioned, he was wildly successful at Texas. Do you expect this move to be something to help trigger that again, to get back in maybe the head coaching game? Is this just a move to get back there on the field? Because he had a pretty good gig there at Georgia. I think he could make a bunch of calls, whether it's in college or in the NFL, and get a gig. Why now, and why this squad, and why this city?
Well, first of all, he knows what the Texas brand is, and you can't blame a guy from going to Florida as a head coach, even though he was the head coach in waiting at Texas. I don't know what his plans are. That the old saying, some coaches are just not meant to be head coaches. Didn't go great at Florida, didn't go great at South Carolina, but maybe he's still relatively young. So maybe that's the idea. But first and foremost, he knows what it's like around here more than anybody when they're in contention from the Mac Brown era, if you will. He wasn't there in 2005 when they won the title. That was Gene Chizik. But 2008, 2009 was a pretty good time for the Longhorns, and he was right in the thick of it. And again, wildly popular. Obviously, his sideline antics are great theater. Some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that has gotten out, great theater. He's rough on the whiteboards, but this is way more than trying to get people to watch his antics. I mean, this is a guy that was a great defensive coach at Texas and other places, and clearly Sark thought that something needed to change, and he had the opportunity to get Will Muschamp, and he's going to bring him back to Austin. So, yeah, this one caught everybody off guard, and I think there are a lot of people we're already saying, hey, Texas defense was really good under Pete Kwiatkowski, man. Yep. Talk about the tough business, but Sark's the one front and center, and he's got to do what he thinks is the best move for this program. So this is a big one.
From a scheme perspective, how do you think these players are going to respond now?
Well, he's going to have so many new key defensive players. That's part of it. So I think they'll adjust to Muschamp more than he'll adjust to them when you're talking about losing an Anthony Hill, losing a Leonga Lafau, a Michael Taft, Jalen Gilbo just announced. We haven't heard Malik Muhammad's intentions as well. We haven't heard officially from Ethan Burke on the defensive line. Trey Moore also gone. So I would say this is going to be a Will Muschamp defense, and the pieces that remain he will work those pieces. Obviously, he loved to attack, but doesn't everybody? They want to make plays, turn teams over, and Texas was really good at that, especially last year in their run to the Final Four. So, but I think Muschamp will put his stamp on it and work with what he's got. Also, guys, this portal season is going to be huge for Texas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Between the holes they need to fill and now some of the holes that have come up because of attrition, that's going to be a big deal for them, and Muschamp will no doubt be a big part of this. I mean, I think he's going to hit the ground running as early as tomorrow.
I remember seeing Whit Muschamp, his son. I think he came into a game late, or maybe on a second on the depth chart there at Vanderbilt. He obviously has a son that is the age of the guys that he's recruiting. How big do you think this can be in recruiting? Because he was already a great recruiter before he had a child of this age, and now he understands kind of fully because he sees it there at home and a college football player himself. How big could this be for Texas recruiting? I know a lot of it's based on money, but I think it can tell a lot of guys hey, these are the laundry list of players I've put in the National Football League.
No doubt. And he's got experience in the NFL, too. He was with the Dolphins, and that's always something. If a coach can have an assistant check that box as well, it can't hurt, right? Because you go into a living room and say, hey, I know what it takes to get to the NFL. Mm-hmm. I send people to the NFL, and I've had players sent to the NFL as an assistant coach. So I think that helps. And you're right. I think Will Muschamp, he has so much passion, and I think he'll have no trouble making an impact. But, yeah, it's a different world now. With NIL, and it's more about the spreadsheet sometimes than about a scheme or a coach or even a program, and that's just the cold fact of college football in these days. They can say that they're coming to a university, but we kind of know what the deal is now. So it's going to be interesting to see what Muschamp does. Sark doesn't have his assistant coaches available to the media other than preseason and bowl games, and Muschamp was obviously a popular media darling here because he would speak every week. Mac Brown had his coordinator speak every week, but Muschamp he didn't pull any punches. And, it's been a few years removed, too. Everybody, evolves a little bit. He hasn't been here in 15 years, so it's not going to be the same Will Muschamp. If he's still going chest bump as high as he can jump, I'm not sure that's the best decision physically as he did back in the day with this Texas team.
Yeah, in his mid-50s, I don't know if those chest bumps hit the exact same way as they do when he's in
He'll be on the wrong. He did one with Brian Marakpo, and I think that was a big mistake.
You put a quick end to that one. You mentioned bowl games, and speaking of bowl prep, getting ready for a really entertaining game against Michigan. In my opinion, this might be one of the better bowls outside of the college football playoff. What are some of the ways that this Texas team is continuing to get ready for that, and maybe Will Muschamp's hand in possibly on-field or off-field there getting the Texas defense ready?
I think he'll have to be in some capacity, right? He doesn't have much time, but
right.
This is a defense. Again, they're going to play a lot of young guys. A lot of guys are going to get chances, and they have some interior guys that they're going to lean on. But I mean, Ty Anthony Smith is their veteran linebacker. Jelani McDonald's their leading tackler. There's been a lot of rumblings, but so far we've never heard anything concrete about his intentions. But like I said, Michael Taft is not going to play in the bowl game. Jalen Gilbo, you can go down the list. So it's going to be a chance to see some young guys. Grayson Littleton coming off an outstanding freshman season. He'll be more prominent for Texas. And we'll see what Michigan's been all quiet, right? So we don't know what's going on there with what their roster is going to look like as well. But the Texas defense hit hard by either the portal or players declaring, which is the modern day way of now opting out of a bowl game, is to announce you're going to the draft even if you have no eligibility, and then you're not going to play in a bowl game. So that's going to be fascinating. But this is really refocused, I think, this whole Texas fan base into, all right, what can Will Muschamp do? And he's popular, guys, but I want to reiterate, Pete Kwiatkowski had a really good defense. So I don't think people are just looking at this as a slam dunk. Yes, I understand 100%. We expect to hear from Sark this week, and I'm sure he'll be asked about that because the defensive numbers were good.
Yeah, and I would expect him to have a job probably pretty soon here. I mean, I know a defense that up in Morgantown that could use some work, but that might be a long shot.
Yeah. And he's a West Coast guy, and it was ironic that I hosted Sark's last coaches show, and PK was our guest. It was the show before the Texas A&M game, and one of the things was, how did he get you out of the Western time zone, the West Coast, and Boise's obviously not totally West Coast, but you know what I mean. And he said it was, because of Sark and because of Texas, but all his roots are out west, and so we'll see if he lands out there. But there are going to be a lot of openings and a lot of coaches moving around still. So you're right. I don't think he's going to have a problem finding work, and we don't know behind the scenes what the conversations were with PK and Sark as well.
Roger, real quick, I don't mean to spin it to next year already, but while we have you on here, Arch did announce that he's going to return for 2026, and when you look,
everybody announced for Arch.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we haven't heard the words out of his mouth, but he is practicing. So
fair.
That's true.
When you look towards next year's schedule, I mean, there are a few games that do pop out, and especially that one at LSU. Looking towards next year, and it is hard to predict the future here in today's transfer portal world, but it feels like all year we've been talking about the offensive line. Do you expect them to improve upon that in the portal, or do you expect some guys to step up next year?
Yes and yes. I'm sure, they're hoping guys continue to develop that are here, but there's no question they're going to have to go get some help in the portal, and I think Sark mentioned that in his signing day press conference, that's going to be a priority. We don't know about Trevor Gooseby, the left tackle. There's a lot of talk that he's a little conflicted on what he wants to do. He's draft eligible. That would obviously be a big loss if he goes. And they were, it's funny, guys, because it was a problem in some areas, but there were some veterans too. So it's not like everybody's back. Now they're going to grow a little bit with the guys that are back, but I don't think there's any question they're going to go get at least 2 offensive linemen. I don't think there's any question they're looking for a running back. I mean, you follow social media, you know all the talk out there about running backs in the portal, and probably got to get some help at linebacker as well. But yeah, for sure, offensive line's got to be a huge priority.
When you look at this matchup with Bryce Underwood and Arch Manning, we were speaking with Ian Kress, who was out of East Lansing, and one of the big things we talked about is like this felt like if you were just a watcher of high school football, these were kind of the 2 most talked about guys in high school football. So it looked like, okay, well, these guys might be on a trajectory to where these 2 are playing in the AFC Championship game in the next decade or so. As you line up these 2 quarterbacks, what are the things you want to see come game day? I know that you said that there might be some limited time on Arch's side, but what are some of the things you want to see on game day as they do spring forward to next season?
Yeah, and again, that was just my thought about the bowl game and the potential for injury. But all indications are, they're going to play this one to try to get that 10th win. But sure, if he stays on that same trajectory, he lost a key receiver this week in DeAndre Moore, who had a big finish to the season. We don't know about the tight end Jack Endries, what his decision might be if something's coming in the next couple of weeks. But I have no reason to believe that that this offense can't be productive against Michigan, and Arch playing his best ball the last half of the season. And I think he's looking forward to one more chance to go out there. So, yeah, and then, Underwood's so dangerous, and, we talked about all the losses on the defense. That's going to be interesting, that linebacking core, trying to keep tabs on him and the dual threat that he is. And they've got really good running backs, too. So I think Michigan's going to like their chances to move the ball on the ground against a Texas defense. We don't really know what it's going to look like, but I think they're pretty confident that Arch Manning can do some damage. Waiting on Trey Wisner, if he's only a sophomore, a third-year guy, so a redshirt sophomore. So again, we're still in the phase where they get to go home a little bit for the holidays before they head to Orlando on the 26th of December. And I'm pretty confident not everybody has made a final decision, but I would think maybe offense will be the lean in this game for both teams, especially with Texas a little beat up, and then the ability for Underwood to make all those off-schedule plays. That's going to be tough for young linebackers to, trust themselves and, as they say, trust their eyes. And not to mention you don't have a Michael Taft back there kind of running that defense, not to mention Anthony Hill. I mean, hey, Colin Simmons, here you go, dude. Go make some plays.
I know. It'll be interesting to see what Muschamp schemes up against Bryce Underwood and that defense and moving things very, very quickly. Speaking of quickly, you were able to jump on this call with us on very, very short notice. Thank you so much. Also for the video, helping provide the video to help tell the story of the defensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, Will Muschamp there back in Austin. Thank you so much, Roger.
Yeah, guys, thanks. Happy holidays.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you as well. Roger Wallace joining us from Austin, and all this came about very quickly, and we always appreciate his time being able to join us here on the show.
Yeah, and this one even shocks me because, it feels like there's just something behind the scenes that we just don't know about, and he alluded to Sark's going to talk later on once we get closer to the bowl game and provide a little bit more clarity on the decision. But this one, I mean, Pete Kwiatkowski is probably going to have a job. My guess, probably 2 weeks from now.
Oh yeah, I would not be a bit surprised if whether he's in college or he finds a spot there in the National Football League with a franchise moving forward.
I will say this.
Yeah.
I know somebody's targeting USC. Oh, Penn State's targeting USC's defensive coordinator, and Roger did say he's a West Coast guy, so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and joins Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, if he slides right there with Lincoln Riley, and they have an amazing recruiting class coming in. They just signed the #1 class a couple of weeks ago, so a lot of talent out that way. A lot of moving and shaking on the coaching circuit just in this week alone. We thought we saw it all a couple of weeks ago. It continues with the assistant coaches. We thank Roger so much for his time here on Southeast Sports Plus. We talk some NFL football, one of the most intriguing Thursday night football games in a really long time. We break down the Rams and Seahawks next. And welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus here on a Monday, breaking down all things college football playoff, but also talking some basketball as well. Happy to have Noah Gross in with us. Happy holiday week, Noah. First of all, we'll get your basketball or your football takes here in just a moment. Let's start with basketball because the women's team, they continue just to look outstanding, still undefeated there on the season. I believe they're number 2 in the latest AP poll still.
Yeah.
What's your overall take after another big win over South Dakota State?
Yeah, coaches are so good at hyping up the teams they play and acting like it's, like the 95 Bulls. But, I mean, South Dakota State's, a decent mid-major program, but, Texas should have played better than they did, and they still won rather handily. They jumped out to a 12-0 lead, and then the Jackrabbits came right back in it. It's kind of interesting for Texas, right, guys, because their head coach, Vic Schaefer, talks about – and he's been coaching a long time in a lot of different places. He says this is the most difficult non-conference slate he's ever been a part of, which I'm not doubting, but they've only had 2 true road games, and one was in the state of Texas where it was at UTRGV down in the Valley, and there were more Texas fans there than I think it's Vaquero fans. And then so this was like their actual first road game where it was more fans that were rooting against them than for them. So it was a different kind of experience, and I think that was new for this team, which there's a lot of new faces. So South Dakota State, I'll keep wanting to say San Diego State every time I think about SDSU. Man, it's driving me nuts. But yeah, Texas was kind of keeping it close, like a 4-point game late in the first half, early in the second half, but they pulled away. And it's, you're a good team when you can beat a good team on the road pretty handily, and your coach is like, I don't think we played well. And that was Vic Schaefer yesterday, but it's just, they're so good. And as I'm sure you guys have heard from Roger before, Vic Schaefer's teams always play better late in the season. He just has the team ascending when it matters most. And I've never seen his teams be this good this early. So that could be, you could be a glass half empty and you're like, well, they're peaking too early. Or you could be like, this is the best team he's ever had here. So I tend to think on the latter side. This team is so special right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you beat South Carolina, who just played in the national championship just a few months ago, when you beat them in the non-conference schedule, that definitely helps. But I remember Roger, I'm sorry, I do not remember exactly the player's name, but I know she was from South Dakota, and that's the whole reason why this game was scheduled in the first place. I felt like when I heard about this game and Texas going to South Dakota State, I feel like they had more to lose than more to gain. So was there ever any talk about this game potentially being taken off the schedule, or was it just going to be played out?
Especially interesting because that player's not even on the team this year anymore. She was, and I don't blame you for not knowing the name, because even if you saw it in front of you, I would kill to try to hear you try to pronounce it. It's the first three letters are NDJ. It's Jacqueline Wenentanda, who transferred out of the Texas program as well. So no, not that I heard of. And I think Vic Schaefer wanted the test like this. I'm sure it wasn't most ideal traveling conditions and everything, but he's giving his group some well-deserved rest. They have one more non-conference game next Sunday before they get into SEC play. So I think they get like 4 full days off to hang out with family and everything. So it was kind of, if you're going to have this trip, I think it's kind of a good time to have it. And like we said, there's not going to be many Texas fans that make that trip to Brookings, South Dakota. So while it's maybe not on the road to face like a Big Ten team and more easy travel, I think it was a unique experience that I think Vic Schaefer, who been doing this a while, knows how to kind of pull the right strings, was probably happy to try to have his team go through.
I believe Roger did make the trip, right? How did that go for him?
Yeah, I was really hoping for more intel. I'm like, oh man, I just saw Buffalo. No, he just, when Roger goes on a trip, here's the situation. Fly in, go to practice with the team, get some version of bar food, like chicken sandwich, burger that you'll later complain about, bed, game. Nothing going to see the town. When Texas played at Alabama in football a couple years ago, and we flew into Birmingham, and I got there early, like 2 or 3 hours before Roger. I got the rental car, and I went to the Birmingham Museum of Art, which was outstanding, by the way.
Yeah.
I was just looking for something to do. He was like astonished by that, as if he was like, what are you doing? You should just be waiting. And I'm like, well, I'd rather see something here and get some local cuisine. So yeah, shout out to the Birmingham Museum of Art. It was beautiful. But yeah, he's more business focused on the road.
That's hilarious, as a Birmingham native, you're dead on that. That museum is awesome. The McWane Center is really good, and so it's 2 different travel styles, which I really love. He's probably been all over the country, so he's like, you know what? I've touched my feet.
He goes on those golfing trips.
Oh,
He's got time for that.
He's got it. You mentioned the fact that it's there's one more game before the SEC slate opens up, and the fact that this team has not played kind of a true road game against a really tough opponent. In the first 5 games in the SEC, it's at LSU and it's at South Carolina for this team, and there's 2 of the top 5 teams there in the country. How do you feel that he will have to get his team ready for hostile environments in league play against the top teams?
Yeah, I think he's probably so fired up for it. And also he's, as I said, coaches and Vic Schaefer kind of leading the charge on this are so good at acting like their opponent is Goliath. They're also good at acting like their level of adversity is higher than everybody else's. And he's talking about how injured his team is, which his team has been a bit beaten up, but it's just largely some depth pieces, and they're getting healthier. So I think they're in a much better spot health-wise right now, so they can kind of rotate more players in when it's going to be a more intense physical game in the SEC, whereas he's right. A lot of their main 3 guards have been playing like almost 40 minutes a game, and Rory Harmon, Madison Booker, and Jordan Lee's kind of elevated into that like trio role for her as well. So now they have Brianna Preston back, who's I think my favorite basketball player to watch, men or women. She's just electrifying. She was 4 for 4 shooting yesterday with 9 points. So to have her back and kind of spell some of those guards, and she can come in and provide such a spark. That's going to be big in the SEC. Last year when Vanderbilt came to town, Vanderbilt was ranked very, very good team and one of the best players in the country. That's when Brianna Preston had one of her breakout games and just like totally in an energized environment rattled off like 8 points and was like screaming and pumping everybody up. So to have her back, I think is massive for SEC play.
Let's spin it towards the gridiron here. I mean, it was a hectic weekend. I think one of the craziest few games. I think the Texas A&M Miami game was a flip of what we thought the Alabama Oklahoma game was. But what was your biggest takeaway from this past weekend?
Well, one, I want to say thank you for not asking me about the Texas men's team because I had nothing to provide. They haven't played since we last talked.
Here's the thing. Yeah, they haven't played since we last talked, and they also played Lemoyne, which is up by where I'm from, and they beat them by 40. So I'm glad they beat Lemoyne. You know, we're trending in the right direction.
Okay, Lemoyne, is that in PA or is that New York?
That's New York. That's Syracuse.
Okay, I'm on a quest. I know one of my friend's parents went to Lemoyne, and I can't figure out who it was. I've been asking around, so. Ever since that game was on the schedule for Texas, I've been like, did your parents go to Lemoyne? Did you? So one day I will find that out. But as far as the football this past weekend, first, my biggest takeaway, the haters were right. JMU and Tulane, no business being there. But I think that's what you guys have been talking about. My thing I want to say, though, is I tweeted this out too. Just because the game is low scoring does not mean it's a bad football game. Like everybody was like, "Oh man, Texas A&M, Miami, how'd they let these two teams in?" It was like a good game. It was just like some bad field goal kicking, some bad special teams, and good defense, which both these teams have. Miami's defensive front is incredible. Texas A&M's defense has been outstanding this entire year, except one half against South Carolina. Texas kind of shredded them a bit in the second half, but Mike Elko's defense is legitimate. I don't know how great Miami's offense is. I'm not a big Carson Beck fan, but for them to do what they did against Marcel Reed and that Texas A&M offense was incredible. I'm a big believer in the leap that Marcel Reed has taken this year. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I thought that was a great game. I had fun watching that, and I was tired of people being like, this game's awful and having no fun because I was like, look at what's coming up after this. This is way better than the next two games.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you this. Since we were talking just a few weeks ago about how all of Texas's rivals are in.
You stole my question.
How does it feel? What's the vibe like in Austin since Oklahoma loses and then Texas A&M loses the next day?
It's actually making me so mad because I don't care either way. Like we remain impartial. This is not Maryland in the college football playoff. That'll be next year. But with having Texas in or Texas not in. They're acting like they won, and like all these, and like love the Texas, love the Texas SIDs and these fans and some of these media outlets that are fan based as well. But they're just like, oh, Texas won a playoff game last year and A&M hasn't, and I'm just like, okay, relax, man. Like, and then it's like just the level of hate watching is crazy. But I will say, for A&M to do this and have like their best season in decades. And not win a playoff game at home, and you're still 0-2 against Texas since you joined the ACC. Since Texas rejoined the SEC, that's a big issue. And because it's like, yes, you've gotten so much better, but what have you accomplished? You haven't made the SEC championship game. You haven't beaten your biggest rival. You haven't won a playoff game. Because them getting in, it was like, okay, you haven't done any of that, but you have everything in front of you. Even one win against Miami, I think, would have silenced a lot of people. Damn. So the fact that they didn't is a pretty massive red flag for this program. That, I mean, because those are the hypotheticals everyone says, right? It's like, for Texas fans, it was posed a while ago. It's like, would you rather win a national championship as a 2-loss team and have those 2 losses be to A&M and Oklahoma, or would you rather like not make the playoff but beat A&M and Oklahoma? And I'm like, the fact that's even a discussion is insanity to me. So for Texas A&M to have kind of neither of those is not great, I would say.
Well, I'll say this: since you cover Texas, you don't really cover Texas A&M so much. Mike Elko got that extension this year. Do you think that was a little bit premature?
No, I am an Elko believer.
You are an
because
Elko.
He has zero personality, and sometimes that's good. Like, he is just man, I hate listening to his press conferences. It is, first of all, he just sounds like judgmental. Every question thrown his way is just like, ugh. He's just like scoffs. So don't love that, but I think his just like vibe and aura is exactly what College Station needs, because Jimbo is just like a used car salesman, snake oil salesman, as people used to call him. So Elko seems to get the most out of his team and has he has a lot of Sark to me, where they are so good at finding, and Sark struggled with this the past couple years, I'll be honest. But Sark a couple years ago, especially like the first year they made the college football playoff, was so good at finding this specific player is going to fit in the portal. And yeah, everyone could tell some of these receivers they got were going to be great, but like how they fit and how they were able to elevate Marcel Reed was incredible. Now, losing Colin Klein, who I don't think called a very good game in the playoff, that could be an issue because Elko's a defensive coach.
Right. But
I do think he's the way he's turned that thing around is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. As you take a look at the next round of games moving forward, do you see any upsets? The Miami, Ohio State, as of right now, Ohio State is about a 10-point favorite. Oregon, Texas Tech. That by seeding, Texas Tech is the higher seed. However, Oregon's a slight 1.5-point favorite. Of course, you got Bama, Indiana. Indiana about a touchdown favorite. Ole Miss, Georgia in a rematch there. And Georgia's about a 7-point favorite. Do you see any upsets there in that second round, knowing what happened last year with all the teams that got those first-round byes all losing?
Yeah, I could see. Well, I've been an Indiana believer for a long time, so I think Indiana will win. I could see Miami beating Ohio State, or at least keeping that game very close. That defense is so good, and I don't know if Ohio State's faced. I mean, the two best defenses they faced this year, they didn't do much on offense at all. Texas held them to 14 points, and Indiana, that was a very low-scoring game as well, and Miami's up there with them. So I could see Miami winning that game. And I do think Ole Miss, I would probably pick Ole Miss to beat Georgia. Just the energy they came out with. I know Kirby's just like the king of coaching mastermind tricks, but I could easily see both the I'm going to say 7 and 6 seeds winning because I don't want to.
Yes, good job. Good job.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Get that nonsense out of here.
Those would be my two selections because I don't think Tech and Oregon would be a real upset either way. I would probably pick Tech, but that's such a close game there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much, man. I know it's been a crazy busy time for you, crazy busy month overall, but now you get a bit of a downtime. Safe travels. Have a great, great Christmas. Thank you so much for joining us here.
All right, gentlemen. Happy holidays. Go Terps.
Absolutely. Go Terps indeed. Noah Gross joining us from KXAN.
We didn't ask him about the Terps.
I know.
He probably didn't want to talk about it.
I know.
They lost another close one.
Did they lose again?
They lost again.
Oh, jeez.
You know, they're the Arkansas of the Big Ten.
Our boy can't catch a break over there. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, take a look at the latest top 25 poll in the AP to close out hour number 1. Stay with us. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we talked about the game coming up tonight. Highly anticipated matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and LA Rams. Could be a game that determines the first place in the division and first place overall there in the NFC.
And of course, it's that time. It's 3:55 on a Thursday, and it is best bets. And here are absolutely nothing is surefire except for these. Kyron Williams, anytime touchdown plus 120. We just talked about in the last block. It is going to be rainy. It is going to be windy. There is going to be little to no throwing of the football. There's going to be little to no kicking of the football. We just saw earlier this week there was a 148-mile-an-hour wind gust recorded in the state of Washington. Just absolute madness. Wow. No hurricane, no nothing. Just nothing but straight wind gusts. And there's going to be a lot of old school running the football. And I know you look at the odds of the next one, and you're kind of like, what? Why would you ever take this at plus 1,000? I'm going to tell you what. Because of that, these odds are going to go down. So buy stock now.
Right.
Buy while it's hot right now. Zach Charbonnet, 2+ touchdowns. Whenever I look at this Seahawks offense this year, I'm always waiting for Kenneth Walker to get his chance. And it felt like a few years ago, Kenneth Walker, I believe when Charbonnet went down, finally had his chance.
Right.
And it seems like once Charbonnet came back, Walker was just seen as the number 2 back. And, I've always been rooting for Kenneth to become the lead back. But I would expect there to be 2 touchdowns here from Zach Charbonnet, maybe 1 passing touchdown by Sam Darnold today, maybe to JSN. But it would have to be on like a screen where JSN just like breaks loose.
Right.
Like I just don't see them, chucking it 40 yards down the field and hitting like Rashid Shaheed or anything like that. Windy, and because of that wind, it's gonna the under 42.5 is gonna hit today.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So everything is kind of tied
back to the
weather.
Thursday, the under usually hits on Thursday, except for last week.
And it's kind of is that double under bet where it's like, hey, it's usually division games on Thursday nights take the under, and Thursday night games take the under. We have a division game on a Thursday night. It feels correlated.
Because when you look at the under in relation to these touchdowns, Kyron Williams, that's pretty much a fair bet to say, the Rams running back there is going to score 2 touchdowns. But when you look at the elements again, I think the Seahawks probably win this game. But when you look at it with the rain and everything, 2+ touchdowns, that's not really like anything out of the ordinary in combination with the under. That's 14 of the 21 points, so to speak, for the under to definitely hit. And then that's like 1 more touchdown with like JSN or Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I'll go to my bets here. I like the Rams. I like the Rams to not only cover but win this game. I think the game plan will be a little more conservative. I just took JSN anytime touchdown because that guy has been an absolute machine all year long, and I don't care if it's a reverse. You mentioned the wind. They'll find a way to put the ball in his hands. And especially if they could put it in his hands in certain positions in the red zone, he's got a shot.
And I will say this: the more I think about it, the more I actually like this because the Colts locked him up last week, and you know he's going to want to have that breakout game, even though it is a short week.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And I know that they'll take the short week, and typically what you do is you rely on things that have worked the entire season. One of the things that's worked the entire season is get 11 the football, and I think they'll get him the football. And I think he'll score a touchdown. Not sure how, so that's the reason why I didn't put receiving or rushing or anything. Just anytime touchdown because I think he'll get it. Matthew Stafford threw for 130 yards against the Seahawks last week. Why is this number 232 with it being a windy game? I just think that the number makes absolutely no sense, and I have one rule when the bet makes no sense passing-wise. This is over passing yards, by the way. I got to go over just because it makes no sense.
I will say this. I think it doesn't make sense because there's one guy that seems to always have an amazing game against the Seahawks. I don't understand it. Tutu Atwell. It's like the only time he actually does something is against Seahawks. I feel like Seahawks fans have to hate him because of that.
We'll break it all down on tomorrow's Southeast Sports Plus. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you here from 2 to 4 on a Friday.